In the year 1274, the most powerful empire the world had ever seen set its sights on a small island nation. The Mongol Empire had conquered everything in its path: China, Korea, the Middle East, Eastern Europe. Millions had fallen before their unstoppable armies. Now, Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, wanted Japan. He sent a simple message to the Japanese emperor: submit or be destroyed. Japan refused. What followed was one of the most incredible military stories in history. Not once, but twice, a seemingly invincible empire tried to conquer Japan. And twice, against impossible odds, they failed. This is the story of how samurai warriors stood against massive Mongol invasions, how tactics clashed with honor, how storms saved a nation, and how one island changed the course of the Mongol Empire forever. To understand why the Mongol invasions of Japan were so significant, you need to understand just how powerful the Mongol Empire was in the 13th century. By 1266, Kublai Khan ruled the largest contiguous empire in human history. His grandfather, Genghis Khan, had built an empire that stretched from Korea to Hungary, from Siberia to the borders of India. Now, Kublai controlled it all. The Mongols were unstoppable. Their cavalry could cover 100 miles in a day, living off the land and striking without warning. Their composite bows, made of wood, horn, and sinew, could pierce armor at 300 yards. They used gunpowder weapons, psychological warfare, and brutal tactics that terrified their enemies. And they had one simple strategy: total conquest. Every nation that resisted was destroyed. Cities were burned to the ground. Populations were slaughtered or enslaved. The Mongols showed no mercy. China fell. The Song dynasty, with millions of soldiers and sophisticated defenses, couldn't stop the Mongol war machine. Korea fell. The Goryeo kingdom became a Mongol vassal state, forced to provide troops and resources for future conquests. The Middle East fell. Baghdad, one of the greatest cities in the world, was sacked in 1258. Even the legendary mountain fortresses of the Assassins couldn't withstand Mongol siege tactics. By 1266, there was only one prize left in East Asia that the Mongols hadn't conquered: Japan. A collection of islands ruled by a weak emperor and a military government called the shogunate. To Kublai Khan, it seemed like an easy target. Just one more conquest to complete his domination of Asia. Kublai Khan sent diplomatic missions to Japan in 1266 and again in 1268, demanding submission. The letters were written in the condescending tone of a superior addressing an inferior. Submit to the great Khan, they said, or face the consequences. The Japanese emperor and the Kamakura shogunate, led by the regent Hojo Tokumune, refused. To them, Japan was a divine land, protected by the gods. They would never bow to foreign barbarians. Kublai Khan was not used to hearing no. In 1274, he assembled an invasion force unlike anything Japan had ever seen. 40,000 troops. Mongol cavalry, Chinese infantry, and Korean soldiers pressed into service against their will. 900 ships. Everything from massive war junks to smaller transport vessels. It was the largest amphibious assault the world had seen up to that point. Their targets were the islands of Tsushima and Iki, stepping stones between Korea and the Japanese mainland. Once these islands fell, the way to Kyushu, the southernmost main island of Japan, would be open. On November 5th, 1274, the Mongol fleet arrived at Tsushima Island. Tsushima was a small, mountainous island between Korea and Japan. Its governor, a samurai named So Sukekuni, commanded a garrison of just 80 warriors. When lookouts spotted the Mongol fleet on the horizon, hundreds of ships stretching as far as the eye could see, Sukekuni knew his men were doomed. But the samurai code of Bushido demanded they fight. Honor was more important than life. Death in battle was preferable to surrender. So Sukekuni sent a message to the mainland warning of the invasion. Then he and his 80 samurai mounted their horses and rode out to meet the invasion force. They gathered on the beach, watching as thousands of Mongol soldiers poured from their ships. The samurai drew their swords and nocked their arrows, and they charged. The battle was a slaughter. The Mongols used tactics the samurai had never seen before. Instead of individual combat, Mongol soldiers fought in coordinated units. Officers used drums, gongs, and flags to direct their troops. Soldiers moved in formation, covering each other with overlapping fields of fire. When the samurai charged, the Mongols fired arrows in volleys, entire units releasing together. The sky went dark with arrows. Samurai and their horses fell in waves. The samurai fought as tradition demanded, as individuals. Each warrior would ride forward, announce his name and lineage, and challenge an enemy to single combat. But the Mongols didn't care about tradition or honor. They simply surrounded individual samurai and cut them down with superior numbers. Mongol archers stayed at range, loosing arrow after arrow. Mongol infantry closed in with spears and swords, working together to bring down even the most skilled samurai. So Sukekuni and his men fought like demons. They knew they were going to die, so they sold their lives as dearly as possible. Some accounts say Sukekuni killed dozens of Mongol soldiers before he fell. But in the end, it didn't matter. The Mongols had numbers, superior tactics, and weapons the samurai couldn't match. By sunset, every single samurai on Tsushima was dead. Not one surrendered. They died defending their island, buying time for the mainland to prepare. Tsushima fell in a single day. The Mongols moved to Iki Island next. The pattern repeated. A small samurai garrison, a few hundred warriors this time, tried to hold off the invasion. They fought with incredible bravery, but they were overwhelmed by Mongol tactics and firepower. Again, the samurai were slaughtered. The Mongol advance seemed unstoppable. On November 19th, 1274, the Mongol fleet reached Hakata Bay on the island of Kyushu, the southernmost of Japan's main islands. This was the real prize. If the Mongols could establish a beachhead here, they could march inland and conquer all of Japan. Thousands of Mongol troops stormed the beaches. Waiting for them were samurai from across Kyushu, warriors who had rushed to defend their homeland. And for the first time, the Japanese experienced the full terror of Mongol warfare on a large scale. The Mongols used weapons the samurai had never encountered: explosive bombs called tetsuhao, early grenades made of iron shells filled with gunpowder and shrapnel. When these bombs exploded, they didn't just kill, they terrified. The blasts threw samurai from their horses, killed men and animals indiscriminately, and spread panic through the Japanese lines. No one in Japan had ever seen or heard anything like it. Mongol archers, fighting on foot and on horseback, fired in disciplined waves. Their composite bows had longer range than traditional Japanese bows. samurai charging forward on horseback were cut down before they could close the distance. Those who made it through the arrows found themselves facing Mongol cavalry, warriors who had spent their entire lives on horseback and knew every trick of mounted combat. The Japanese were being pushed back. Their traditional tactics, developed for fighting other samurai in ritualized combat, meant nothing against the Mongol war machine. Samurai were trained to fight as individuals, to seek out worthy opponents and prove their valor in single combat. The Mongols had no interest in individual honor. They fought as units, supporting each other, using coordinated tactics that had conquered half the known world. But the samurai had one advantage the Mongols didn't expect. They were defending their homes. Their families were behind them. Their ancestors' graves were on this soil. They fought with a desperation and ferocity that even the veteran Mongol soldiers found shocking. Samurai who were surrounded would fight to the death, taking as many enemies with them as possible. Wounded samurai would drag themselves forward to kill one more Mongol before they died. As night fell on November 19th, the battle was still raging. The Mongols had pushed the samurai back from the beaches, but they hadn't broken the Japanese resistance. Mongol commanders, nervous about being so far from their ships and facing increasingly desperate samurai counterattacks in the darkness, made a decision. They would retreat to their fleet for the night, rest, and resume the attack in the morning with fresh troops. That night, a storm struck. It started as wind and rain, typical autumn weather for the region. But it grew worse. Fierce winds battered the Mongol fleet anchored in Hakata Bay. Ships dragged their anchors and crashed into each other. Hulls split open, masts snapped. Thousands of soldiers, packed below deck on overcrowded ships, drowned as their vessels sank. By morning, nearly a third of the invasion force was destroyed. Ships were wrecked on the beaches. Bodies washed ashore by the hundreds. The surviving Mongol commanders looked at the devastation and made a decision. They had lost too many men and too many ships. The invasion was over. The fleet retreated back to Korea. Japan had survived. Barely. The Japanese called the storm Kamikaze, the divine wind. They believed the gods, the kami, had protected Japan from foreign invasion. Shinto priests declared that Japan was a sacred land, blessed and defended by divine forces. The samurai had fought bravely, but it was the gods who had saved them. This belief would shape Japanese culture for centuries. But the Japanese leaders, particularly the regent Hojo Tokimune, knew the truth. The storm had saved them this time, but the Mongols would return. And next time, they might not be so lucky. Tokimune immediately began preparing for the next invasion. He ordered the construction of a massive stone wall along the entire length of Hakata Bay. The wall would be 2 to 3 meters high, stretching for miles. It would prevent Mongol cavalry from charging onto the beaches and give Japanese defenders a fortified position to fight from. Tokimune also changed how the samurai fought. He ordered them to abandon their traditional individual combat tactics and learn to fight as units, the way the Mongols did. He mobilized more warriors from across Japan and stockpiled weapons and supplies. Coastal villages were fortified. A defensive network was established. Every able-bodied man in Kyushu was trained to fight. Japan would not be caught unprepared again, and Tokimune was right to prepare, because across the sea in China, Kublai Khan was planning his revenge. The Mongol emperor was furious. His forces had never been turned back by weather before. Other nations had tried to resist and been crushed. But Japan had survived, and that was a humiliation Kublai Khan could not accept. He saw the failed invasion not as a defeat, but as a temporary setback. He would return, and this time he would bring such overwhelming force that no storm, no wall, and no amount of samurai bravery could stop him. For 7 years, Kublai Khan prepared. He assembled the largest invasion force in history. He conscripted soldiers from across his empire. He commandeered every ship he could find in China and Korea. He stockpiled weapons, food, and supplies. This would not be another raid. This would be total war. The complete subjugation of Japan. In 1281, 2 massive fleets set sail for Japan. The Eastern Fleet, departing from Korea, carried 40,000 troops. The Southern Fleet, departing from southern China, carried 100,000 troops. Combined, 140,000 soldiers were coming to conquer Japan. This was more than 3 times the size of the first invasion. It was one of the largest amphibious assaults in history, a record that would stand until the Allied invasions of World War II. The Eastern Fleet arrived first at Hakata Bay in June 1281. The Mongol commanders expected to find the same beaches they had landed on 7 years earlier. Instead, they found a stone wall. Miles of fortifications, manned by thousands of samurai, the wall prevented the Mongols from landing their cavalry, their most powerful weapon. Mongol soldiers who tried to scale the wall were met with arrows, spears, and rocks. It was a killing field. The Mongols tried different tactics. They attempted to land at other beaches, but Japanese defenders were everywhere. They tried night attacks, but small boats manned by samurai harassed their fleet in the darkness, setting ships on fire and killing soldiers as they slept. The Mongols had never faced resistance like this. For weeks, they threw everything they had at the Japanese defenses, but the wall held. Then, in early August, the Southern Fleet finally arrived. The 2 fleets combined into an overwhelming force, 140,000 troops against perhaps 40,000 Japanese defenders. The Mongols launched a massive, coordinated assault. Thousands of troops attacked different points along the wall simultaneously. Ships bombarded Japanese positions. The battle was brutal and desperate. The Japanese fought with everything they had. Samurai conducted daring nighttime raids on the Mongol camps, sneaking through enemy lines to kill officers and spread chaos. Small boats, manned by volunteer crews who knew they probably wouldn't survive, attacked the Mongol fleet under cover of darkness, ramming ships and setting them ablaze before being cut down. The entire population of Kyushu, men, women, and even children, contributed to the defense. Everyone knew what was at stake. If the wall fell, Japan fell. But the Mongols kept coming. Day after day, week after week, they attacked. The Japanese defenders were exhausted. Supplies were running low. Men were dying. The wall was starting to crack in places. It seemed only a matter of time before the sheer weight of numbers overwhelmed the defenders and the Mongols would break through. Then, on August 15th, 1281, the weather began to change. Sailors and fishermen noticed it first. The wind was shifting. The clouds were building in an ominous way. Dark storm clouds gathered on the horizon, moving fast. The air felt heavy, oppressive. Mongol commanders, remembering what had happened 7 years earlier, grew nervous. They had been warned about typhoon season, but Kublai Khan had been impatient to launch the invasion. Now they were packed into Hakata Bay with over 1,000 ships, and a storm was coming. That night, a massive typhoon struck. This wasn't the relatively minor storm that had damaged the first invasion. This was one of the worst typhoons to hit Japan in living memory. For 2 days, the storm raged with unbelievable fury. Winds reached speeds that tore ships apart. Waves as high as buildings crashed over the Mongol fleet. Ships, packed together in the bay, were smashed against each other like toys. Hulls splintered. Masts shattered. Entire vessels capsized and sank in seconds. Below deck, thousands of soldiers were trapped. Many of the ships in the southern fleet were hastily built riverboats, never designed for the open ocean. These ships broke apart completely in the storm. Soldiers who managed to escape drowning were swept away by the waves or smashed against rocks. The screams of dying men were drowned out by the howling wind and crashing thunder. It was apocalyptic. By the time the storm finally passed, the Mongol invasion force was destroyed. As many as 100,000 men were dead or missing. Bodies washed up on Japanese beaches for weeks. Wrecked ships and debris covered the coastline. The survivors, scattered across different ships and separated from their commanders, were demoralized and broken. Many were so traumatized they couldn't fight anymore. The fleet limped back to China and Korea, a shattered remnant of the mighty force that had set sail just months before. The second invasion had failed. Once again, the Japanese called it Kamikaze, the divine wind. To them, it was proof that Japan was protected by the gods. The kami had sent the storm to destroy the invaders, just as they had 7 years before. The myth of Japan as a sacred, unconquerable land was now firmly established in the Japanese consciousness. Kublai Khan was devastated by the loss. He had spent enormous resources on the invasion, draining the empire's treasury and conscripting hundreds of thousands of men. The failure damaged his prestige and raised questions about his leadership. He immediately began planning a third invasion, determined to subjugate Japan, no matter the cost. But it was not to be. Internal problems in the Mongol Empire, rebellions in China, conflicts on other borders, and the sheer financial strain of the failed invasions made another attempt impossible. Kublai Khan spent the rest of his life planning an invasion he would never launch. He died in 1294, bitter and frustrated. His successors, facing their own challenges, never seriously attempted to conquer Japan again. For the first time in decades, the Mongol Empire had been decisively, permanently defeated. So why did the Mongols fail? It's easy to say it was just the weather, just bad luck. And the weather certainly played a huge role. Both invasions were destroyed by storms. But that's not the whole story. The Mongols were masters of land warfare. Their cavalry was unbeatable on the open plains of Central Asia. But Japan is an island nation. The Mongols had to fight a naval campaign, and their ships were not built for the Pacific Ocean. Many of the vessels, especially in the southern fleet of the second invasion, were riverboats. They were designed for the calm waters of Chinese rivers, not the open ocean with its powerful currents and massive waves. Even without typhoons, these ships were vulnerable. The timing of both invasions worked against the Mongols. They arrived during typhoon season, the period from August to October when massive storms regularly strike Japan. The Mongol commanders knew this. Korean advisors warned them. But Kublai Khan was impatient. He wanted results, and he wanted them quickly. That impatience cost him everything. The samurai also deserve credit. They learned from the first invasion and adapted. After 1274, they stopped relying on individual combat and started fighting as coordinated units. They built fortifications. They used guerrilla warfare, striking at night and in bad weather when the Mongols were vulnerable. They fought with the desperation of men defending their homeland, their families, their gods. That kind of motivation is worth more than any weapon. And the Japanese had one final advantage. They were fighting on their own soil. They knew the terrain. They knew the weather patterns. They could retreat, resupply, and return to the fight. The Mongols were thousands of miles from home, at the end of a long and fragile supply line. Every ship lost, every soldier killed, weakened them in a way that the Japanese, fighting for survival, could sustain. The failure to conquer Japan had lasting consequences for both sides. For the Mongol Empire, it was a turning point. Kublai Khan had poured enormous resources into the invasions. The loss weakened his prestige across the empire. It drained the treasury. It showed that the Mongols, despite their fearsome reputation, were not invincible. Other nations took note. If Japan could resist, maybe they could too. For Japan, the victory became legendary. The myth of the Kamikaze, the divine wind that protected the sacred islands, became central to Japanese identity. It reinforced the belief that Japan was special, chosen by the gods, immune to foreign conquest. That belief would shape Japanese culture, politics, and military thinking for centuries. It wasn't until 1945, over 600 years later, that Japan was successfully invaded and occupied for the first time in its history. The story of the Mongol invasions also reminds us that even the greatest empires have limits. The Mongols conquered more territory than anyone else in history. They defeated the Chinese, the Persians, the Russians, the Arabs. They built an empire that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. But they couldn't conquer everything. Geography matters, weather matters, and sometimes a determined people fighting for their survival can hold back even the most powerful army in the world. The samurai who stood on the beaches of Hakata Bay didn't defeat the Mongols alone. The storms did much of the work. But those samurai held the line long enough for the storms to matter. They bought time. They prevented the Mongols from establishing a secure beachhead. They made the invasion so costly, so difficult, that when the typhoons struck, the Mongols had no choice but to retreat. And that made all the difference. The Mongol invasions of Japan remain one of the most dramatic military stories in history. Not because of individual heroism, though there was plenty of that. Not because of superior tactics or technology, though those played a role. But because of what happened when an unstoppable force, the greatest empire the world had ever seen, met the immovable object of a nation fighting for survival, defended by the fury of nature itself. Japan survived. The Mongol Empire moved on to other conquests, other wars, and the divine wind, the Kamikaze, passed from history into legend. A reminder that sometimes the greatest victories come not from strength alone, but from the combination of courage, preparation, and forces beyond anyone's control. What other stories has history tried to bury? Subscribe to Ancient Echoes and discover the heroes the world forgot.